Hello there, geographers. Today we're going to talk about how urban environments develop. Fun. Okay, people, we've got three learning goals today, and they are know the impacts of urban growth, you can know the history of cities, and you're going to be able to conduct a SWOT analysis. That stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Jaws. So, urban cities are growing. We can all accept that's true. What are the impacts of this growth? On the environment, been some negative impacts on the environment. Urban sprawl, obviously, as we mentioned last time, takes up a lot of the environment, takes up a lot of land. Um, Traffic is also bad for the environment because what do cars do? They pump out carbon dioxide and all kinds of other poisonous gases, which is not good for the environment. That leads to climate change. If we had electric cars, though, that'd be pretty sweet. And air and water pollution. So all the kinds of stuff that goes on in cities pollute the air and also pollutes the water. So think about all the rubbish that gets left around in parks and stuff like that. It eventually all washes into streams and then into rivers and then out into the ocean. Heaps of water pollution comes from cities. Sad but true. From a social point of view, the impacts of urban growth include there is inadequate social housing and slums. So while cities grow, and a lot of, as mentioned, a lot of the growth in cities is occurring in the developing world, so in poorer countries, particularly in Africa and in Asia, and those countries are not wealthy enough to be able to afford high quality housing like what we might see in Australia. So we get some pretty bodgy looking houses. There's also an increase in homelessness. People who experience homelessness basically means they don't have a secure, not everyone who's homeless is sleeping on the street, um, but yes, it's a real big problem and it's growing because we've got so much inequality in our society. If you think about all the, some people have got billions and billions of dollars, and yet some people don't even have a secure roof over their heads. That's sad. Another social impact, you could also argue that that's environmental, is water and sewerage supply. So in a lot of developing countries where these cities are getting massiver and massiver, if that's a word, they aren't able to provide great sewerage and water facilities. Just if you want to know that sewage is the stuff and sewerage is the hardware. So like all the pipes, it's called sewerage, and the stuff that goes in the sewerage pipes is sewage. That's the poo and wee. You know it. There's also crime. So look, crime worldwide has been dropping since whenever we've been recording it in general. However, there's definitely, as more people move into a city, there's more opportunity for there to be crime, and it's something that people who manage cities are really quite concerned about. The overall trend for crime is that it is going down, but there are hotspots in certain types of crime that can become more common from time to time. And disease. I think we all probably know a bit more about that than we used to. People living in close quarters creates disease. So massive increase in diseases in humans when we started settled agriculture. So when we started living in houses rather than spread out as hunter-gatherers. A little bit of history there for you. Blank dot point. Right. This shows the increase in population of rural and then of urban. So if you add those two together, that's the total world population. So you can see there that in about 2007, the urban population became more than rural population, meaning urbanization rates were started to be above 50% worldwide from then onwards. And you can really see where the real growth in world population is. See, the rural population is kind of flattening off, but the urban population is going ballistics. Right. So I might have given you the answer to some of those questions, but I want you to have a think about When did urban overtake rural? Which of the two is growing faster? And remember how to work out the full world population. What do you reckon the world population was in 1960 from looking at that graph? Yeah, as mentioned, urban overtook rural in about 2007. Urban is growing faster, and the world population in 1960, well, there was 1 billion in urban areas, 2 billion in rural, so combined that's 1 plus 2 is 3 billion in 1960. Okay, another graph. This is showing the urbanization rates. So if you were at 100%, that would mean that everyone in your country lived in a city. If it was 0%, it would mean there are no cities. So just have a look at how different countries have urbanized over the past 500 years. There's been a massive increase recently. So, which is the most urbanized country in the world? Well, which is the most urbanized country on this list? Which graph do you reckon, which country do you reckon is urbanizing the fastest? And when did the USA have the same average level of urbanization as the rest of the world? Have a think about that. You can just answer them in your head. Yeah, so obviously the most urbanized country in the world, you just look at which one is the highest up the vertical axis, so it's Japan. I would say, yeah, that question is actually wrong. It's not the most urbanized country in the world because there are only 1, 2, 3, 4 countries listed on there. So there might be another country that's even more urban than Japan. It's just not on that graph. Which country is urbanizing the fastest? So to find out which one's going the fastest, you would of course look at which one has got the steepest upward angle. And I think we'd probably agree that is China. When did the USA have the same average level of urbanization as the rest of the world? So you look at the orange line, that's USA, and the red line is world, and when do they intersect? So when are they the exact? And you can see there, it's about here. Let me do that in red. It's about here. So I would say about 1840. There you go. Pat yourself on the back if you got all those right. Okay, the development of cities. So this is the history of cities. So we've had cities for a long time, for almost 6,000 years. And they first rose up in the Middle East, which is where like Israel and stuff is now, China and India. And they were mostly on the banks of major rivers. In the Industrial Revolution, probably the second, as you may have heard me say before, I think the two biggest events in human history are the Agricultural Revolution, when we went from being hunter-gatherers to being farmers, and then the other one is the Industrial Revolution, when we went from being farmers to being workers. So, the Industrial Revolution, which was basically that big event that took place over about 100 years when everything became mechanized and factories started doing all the work rather than just humans and animals. As part of the Industrial Revolution, heaps of people moved to cities because that's where the work was. We now have megacities. Our megacity, as you may remember from year 8, is any city over 10 million people. That's massive. That's like double Melbourne. There are 47, well, there were 47 of them in 2017, so, you know, one city over 10 million is pretty freaky, but to think that on Earth there are 47 of those, yeah, so it's like 500 million people live in megacities. And this is where the fastest number of people are being born or moving to. It's in these megacities. They're getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Here's a list of the biggest megacities. So we've got Tokyo, and it goes all the way down. These are all megacities from 2017. Got a heap there. You'll notice that a lot of them are in Asia. London coming in there at 29. That is all 47, is it? Yep, there you go. Lima at the end there. So, heaps. lots in China. Like some of the mega cities in China I've never heard of, like Jinan, Harbin, never heard of them. But they've got 10 million people. So it gives you an idea of how big China's population is. It's large. I love this photo. It freaks me out. This is just a random photo from a plane of Mexico City. So Mexico City's got about 35 million people, and that's just freaky. I've been to Mexico City, but only to the city centre, so this must be in the suburbs, but like, that's just freaky, like, city going on forever. Okay, you need to read chapter 7.2. So I'm summarising the chapter for you, but you still need to read it. There's extra stuff in there, and that kind of stuff will be in the exam. Right. Your activity today is to do a SWOT analysis. That's finding the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the growth of cities. So I want you to think, cities are growing. What are two strengths of this? What are two weaknesses? What are two opportunities that there might be because cities are growing? And what are two threats that there might be because cities are growing? Fill that out in your exercise book, please. So here's some examples there. Don't use them. Right, time to watch a video. The urbanization and the growth of global cities. Check it out.
Cities are one of humankind's great innovations, and their importance to the global economy continues to grow. Half the people on the planet now live in urban areas. That is expected to rise to 2/3 of the global population by 2050. While people are drawn to the higher living standards and social amenities that cities provide, the benefits of urbanization go much further than that. Cities bring large groups of people together. This connectivity stimulates ideas and expands human knowledge. It allows people to specialize in a particular skill, continually refining their capabilities. This is the main driver of productivity in the world today. Cities already generate more than 80% of the world's GDP, and this is likely to increase as cities continue to grow. To realize the economic benefits of urbanization, cities need the right infrastructure. In the developed world, aging infrastructure needs to be upgraded to meet the demands of the modern economy. It is estimated Europe needs to spend more than 600 billion euros a year on infrastructure investment. As a major European city, London will play a crucial role in this infrastructure spending over the next 15 years. While such investment has historically come from the public sector, private finance now plays an increasingly important role. The Thames Tideway Tunnel and the Mersey Gateway project are just two examples of how the public and private sectors can work together to deliver sustainable assets that benefit investors and customers. Collaboration of this kind is likely to lead to continued innovation in infrastructure development. This is critical in addressing the urbanization challenges of the future. Find out more about the challenges of urbanization and the possible solutions.
Please write down the words reflection activity, and under that I want you to come up with, pretend that this lesson was an event and you're a newspaper writer. I want you to come up with a headline, one short phrase that sums up the entire lesson. Do it. Thanks heaps for taking part in this lesson, and don't ever forget to keep it real.